What you doing, honey? Hi.
You open the legs for me?
It's a boy. You have a baby brother,
I just gave birth to our second baby, and it was the most empowering experience of my entire life. I actually spent the majority of my labor alone until the very end, and I want to share about it. With my first, I had an unmedicated birth at a standalone birth center. And with him, we had him at home, a home birth. And though my first birth, which I actually have the birth story here on YouTube, though my first birth from the outside was like totally great, totally positive, it was amazing bringing her into the world like that, there were things that I processed after the fact. The biggest one being that I felt like I wasn't necessarily like strong in my yeses and nos yet. And the biggest thing I noticed in my first, I remember talking to my husband and saying like, I didn't have this overwhelming feeling of being proud of myself, which is crazy because I think every woman should feel proud of themselves no matter how they give birth. But when I did a lot of digging, the reason why I felt that way was because I just felt like I ran away from a lot of the intensity that birth brought. And it was something that I actually struggled with in early motherhood. It felt like my first birth revealed a lot of how I ran away from hard things or intensity or kind of wanted to play the victim in motherhood, where I was just like, I literally just can't. Someone else make this decision for me. Someone else do this thing for me. I just want to like abdicate that responsibility instead of like really welcoming and being like, no, I'm a mom. Like, this is my initiation. Like, I'm going to run towards the intensity. I was made to do this. And so my biggest prayer going into the second labor, it wasn't for a pain-free birth. It wasn't for this like euphoric kind of experience, which is what I had prayed for the first time. And I realized now that I was so attached to that outcome that I actually didn't fully embrace all that birth could initiate me into as a mom, because I got so caught up in just trying to visualize like a pain-free birth. And this time, my biggest prayer and visualization for this next birth was that I'm going to bring an entire different energy to this birth. Whereas the first one, I ran away from the intensity, this time I'm going to run towards it. That was for two main reasons. One is because if you've ever given birth, you know that usually like going towards the intensity of a contraction actually helps you give birth faster. And then two, because this is motherhood. Like I felt this like strong calling that like this is the woman that I am now. There's 4 years in between when I gave birth, the first and the second time. I've learned and just changed so much, and I'm a woman where like I want it as a mom to like go towards the intensity and to be able to soften and to go towards the hard things and be able to like meet my edge there and like rely on God there. And so I really was seeing this birth as like, this is a new opportunity for a different kind of initiation. And it is insane and hilarious because, you guys, I kid you not, my second birth and my first birth on paper were almost exactly the same. It was like God was like, okay, here's your do-over. Like, how do you want to do this differently? Here's your do-over. Show up differently. Okay, so at time of filming this, right this second, I am a month postpartum. And I cannot express how much more enjoyable this postpartum has been so far compared to my last, because I feel so much better, stronger and healthier and more resilient against things like lack of sleep, breastfeeding all the time. And I'm reminded again how valuable it is for women of all walks of life to be able to know their body and be equipped to nourish it and take care of it well. And a lot of that starts with knowing what is going on in your body. And so I want to thank today's sponsor, Function Health. I talked about them last month. We actually partnered with them, and we're so excited to partner with them for my husband because he has been battling a long history of some chronic health issues that we've seen some improvements in. But we decided this year, hey, we really need to like get an idea of really what's going on in your body, why certain things are really persisting. And Function Health has been amazing. Function Health is the only platform that gives you access to the kind of data that most people will not get given by their doctors. They will never actually even know or see about their body. You can test over 100 different biomarkers, from heart health to toxins, inflammation, hormones, stress levels. As someone that's very passionate about like taking your health into your own hands, for years I have run my own lab work, and I can tell you, this is my favorite thing about Function. The cost of the membership is literally what I have paid for 1 or 2 of these markers on my own when I had to order my own lab work. And we got so many markers done for my husband. And so when it comes to accessibility, you really can't match it. The accessibility of being able to get that many lab markers for the price of the membership has been my absolute hands down favorite part of Function. There were 2 areas that needed a lot of work. His inflammation was very high and his immune system was very burdened. So helpful to get such a big picture of what was going on and to have a game plan of like, okay, now we know where to focus on. Now we know what your body needs and what your body is telling us. Function Health has an offer for you guys. The first 1,000 people to visit my link will get a $100 credit towards any of the memberships for their first time. Just visit functionhealth.com/Jessica Rothley or use code all caps J Rothley 100 at checkout. Let me tell you exactly what happened in this labor. I woke up around 2:30 one night to feel contractions. And I knew they were contractions because they were the tightening that wrapped all the way around my back. And I was like, that feels like a contraction. And then about maybe 15 minutes later, I didn't time anything the whole birth at all. I got another one and I was like, that's a contraction. And then I got another one. I was like, okay, I'm definitely in labor. So me, my husband, and my daughter were all sleeping in the spare bedroom at this point. I got up, crept out, and I was like, okay. I came into the room and I got everything ready. If you've ever had a home birth, you know, you put like the shower curtain on the bed. I was putting towels and like those doggy pads all over the rug because we have a white rug under the bed, which is a really bold move if you're having a home birth. I got all the stuff that the midwife might need. I gathered all the supplies. I made myself a couple electrolyte drinks. I grabbed a banana in case I needed a snack. I got water. I got a waste basket because I had vomited the first birth and I had a feeling that my body was probably going to do that again. I was right, shocker. And so I basically like set up my birthing area. I took like 45 minutes and I just got everything logistically that I would need to give birth because, like I said, it was 3 a.m. at this point. I did not want to wake up my husband and my daughter. I didn't know how fast or how long this was going to go. And so I just wanted them to be rested because my husband was going to be with Ruth and we didn't know how she would feel, like how involved she wanted to be with birth. And so I really had this desire to just like hunker down, be alone. I didn't text my midwife. I didn't tell my ex that I was in labor. I just got everything ready and I laid back down to bed. And basically for the next, how long was that? 5 hours until my husband and daughter woke up at 8:30. I was laying and breathing through contractions and throwing up. That's just something I do. Honestly, in labor, I basically throw up all throughout labor. And this is a perfect example. The first time I gave birth, I threw up a lot. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm throwing up this much. I was just like dreading it. It was this terrible thing. This time, when I was throwing up, I was like, good. Throw up. Get your cervix like more ripe. This is helping you. This is for you. This is for baby. Like, good. The contractions are working. Like, my entire mentality, I'm telling you, this whole birth, it was like, this is a deep track. Please tell me in the comments if you know this reference. You know in the Jim Carrey Grinch, when they're like doing at the Hoovelation and they're like feeding him the pudding and he gets so full and he finally like turns and he's like, is that the best you got? And as they're like shoving fudge in his mouth. I feel like I embodied that, honestly, this birth. I was just like, everything that came up, I was like, this is for me. This is for baby. Good, good. Okay, I'm going to welcome anything that feels intense. I'm welcoming it because I know it's going to push me closer to see baby. So 8:30 comes. The sun is up, which I was so grateful for. I had really been wanting to give birth during the day. I just love daytime, and anyone that has given birth in the nighttime can know that like it can feel longer when you're just like alone at night. And my husband and daughter woke up and they were looking for me and they came in the room and my husband saw like everything set up and saw that there was vomit in the wastebasket and he was like, what's happening here? And I was like, I've been in labor for about 6.5 hours. And he was like, okay. And I told my daughter, like, the baby's coming today. Like, the baby's gonna come today. And she's like, really? Because we've been talking about it for so long. I don't even think that she believed it. And up until that point, up until I probably around 7:30, I could relax through contractions, which is what I really focused on. I did like a mix of like kind of Bradley Method-esque, just breathing, counting my way through, and honestly just visualizing. I was something that kept coming up for me was that night before we went into labor. We had gone to the beach, and I was feeling I really had a feeling I was going to go into labor that night, because that day I noticed that I've been pretty even keeled emotionally this whole pregnancy. That day I had such big emotions, and I remember driving. I'm gonna start crying now. Driving to the beach, my daughter was humming along to a song, and she was laughing a lot because of the way that it felt on her mouth. And I was looking at her. I'm gonna cry. I was looking at her giggling, and I was just crying because of like just pure joy, like overflowing from my heart. I was visualizing that. Like I was thinking of her face for like the first 4 hours of labor, like when I would get an intense contraction. And I was just like flooded with like joy and excitement at like, I'm gonna meet my baby soon. I'm gonna meet my baby soon. Like, look at the baby I already have. Like, just like joy and gratitude, thanking God for one child and getting to have another. Like, and just flooding my body with the goodness of the fact that I'm in labor about to meet my baby instead of dread about the next contraction. But long story short, 9:30 comes along. My husband calls the midwife, and she gets here probably around 10ish and peeks her head in. And at this point, I'm roaring. And I know I'm either like approaching transition. I knew I was like, I'm moving. And at this point, I'm on my hands and knees. I'm doing a lot of rocking, and I'm doing a lot of like asymmetrical, like I would rock back and like squat onto one foot, and I would rock back and squat onto another foot. And I just found that I was testing contractions to see what felt the most intense. And I found that there were certain positions, namely when I was squatting by the bed and when I was rocking into that like half squat, moving my pelvis, when they felt really intense, and I would feel more of the intensity like dropping lower. And so I ran towards that because I knew that that was helping baby descend, and that's what I needed to do. Whereas when I was trying to relax through them, I didn't feel as much of a movement. Um, so from like 10 to 11, I don't even know really, 10 to 11, 10 to 11:30, my midwife, she was like very hands off, which is what I had wanted. She came in to check baby's heartbeat a few times, but they pretty much, she stayed out of the room until I, I'm in transition at this point, probably, I don't know, 11:30, noon. The roarings are loud. You know, you hit that transition, you're roaring. You also hit your edge, where mentally you just feel like I'm at my limit. And that's usually an indicator that you're in transition and you're really close to meeting your baby. And the truth was that the midwife and the midwife assistant came in because they had heard me roaring, and they basically were like, how can we support you? The same thing happened with my first labor. And I'm taking a moment to pause and contrast this, because in my first labor, I was like, give me anything. Literally give me anything. I was going in the shower. I was going in the tub. They offered me homeopathy. They offered me IV bags, which I took. They gave me 2 doses of Benadryl, thinking that it would help me to like get rest. It didn't. But they were like, okay, they were just throwing things out at me, which is their job. And I was like desperate, like, please do anything, give me anything. And I was just taking. This time they came in, and it was like the same thing. They were like, okay, they've heard me roaring for a long time, so they probably came in and was like, okay, here's how we can offer support. And they made all of these suggestions: try to get some rest, try to eat something, we can do an injection of saline. Like they offered me all of these things. And it was like I had this same opportunity where I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? I'm not saying this because I think it's wrong to accept support. What I'm saying was that mentally, I felt so much more strong and so much more in tune with what I really needed. I was not looking for an escape this time, and that's what I was really looking for with my first birth. I was like, please, Lord, give me anything that will just help me avoid this. This time I was like, I'm not looking for anything that's going to help me avoid this. I know I'm close. I know I'm going to meet baby soon. So let me think about what I need that will actually give me support and not just provide an escape. Because at that point, I'm like, resting is not an option. My contractions were coming on top of each other. I said, I don't really think I need to do the mouth circuit. I definitely don't want an injection, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, okay, hip squeezes. I feel like the whole time, birth felt very much like a conversation between me and my son, which I didn't know was my son at the time, but me and baby. I was like really talking to him the whole time. I was going back and forth between praying and talking to baby and just like encouraging him. And I kept visualizing him dropping down. And it just felt like mentally, I didn't listen to music. I didn't have the Christian hypnobirthing stuff on that I thought I would. It was silence except for me roaring and me talking to baby. And I just felt mentally in like a complete focus zone. And so I knew, I was like, okay, I feel like my contractions are trying to drop him down, but it's taking a long time. Hi. So we're going to do hip squeezes. At this point, I'm in transition and I'm like actually getting near the end of transition. And I would like rest for 30 seconds, however long was it between my contractions. And then I'd feel a contraction, and I mentally had to make the choice every time to hop up and get on my hands and knees. Or what I started doing, because it was really intense, was I dropped down next to my bed into a squat because I felt the most pulling down. Like I felt the most dissension of him when I would do that, and it was very, very intense, but I knew it was the most effective. And so it was like every contraction, it was like this choice I had to make to go towards the intensity for the sake of meeting my baby and for the sake of like making the hard choice that you know is the best choice, which I feel like is such a beautiful picture of motherhood. And then that blessed switch, you feel the contraction shift from transition to like a bearing down. And I smiled so big. I was like, I'm feeling like I'm bearing down. And at that point, I was just smiling, just talking to baby. We're so close. We can go slow now. It's okay. We're just breathing, focusing on those deep breaths, not pushing, but letting my body push. My husband and daughter had come in basically like right before I started feeling the bearing down. And they came in to pray over me. But I didn't know how long I had in between contractions. And I knew my daughter was like, kind of like uncomfortable with just like the loudness and the intensity of it. And I knew I was going to be roaring soon. And so I told them, like, they prayed over me real quick. And I told them I loved them. And then I gently suggested that they go on a walk around the block. My husband was like, great idea. They were gone for literally less than 20 minutes. And in that time, transition ended, felt the bearing down, and he was born. So the midwife ended up calling him and literally said, do you want to come meet your baby? And Max said when he heard that, he was shocked. He just did not expect that I was that close. At that point, I had been in labor for 11 hours. But I think when you're in transition, the thing about transition you have to remember is that's the point when you think you're going to be in labor forever. Because it's just that, it's like the point where you think you're hitting all your limits, you're hitting your edges, and just be encouraged because you know that's when you're the closest. And that's something I knew mentally. And so I remember saying, I know I'm close because I feel like I'm at my limit and I know I'm close and I'm there. And so there was just like a lot of mental fortitude and like fortifying myself throughout labor because, and you probably, if you've watched any birth stories, you've probably heard women say this, birth is so mental. It is all, I believe it's all mental. And I can say that because, which is what I was saying in the beginning, compare and contrast. On paper, from everything that, like, even to where I felt the contractions, to how long my labor was, were so similar between my first and my second labor. The only difference was when my water broke. Really. That's the only difference between the two labors. Even from how many times I threw up was the same. I mean, it was very similar, but I was different. Like, I was a different woman in the second birth. And the experience of that birth, it felt like a reinitiation in a way that it's hard to explain. It just felt like it felt like I was given an opportunity to reinitiate into motherhood, which I am because I feel like every time you have a kid, you have like a new transformation in motherhood. You're a new kind of mom. And I felt so proud of myself, which is heartbreaking to me that I didn't feel proud of myself after my first. But the accomplishment I felt, because I felt like I stayed mentally, like I did not run away mentally. I stayed focused and I stayed like in it. Like I didn't abdicate and I didn't escape. That was what I really wanted from this birth. And it felt like God gave me literally the perfect opportunity. He was like, here's your first birth and do it over again. Even the fact that both of my babies were like, labor started on a Friday night and I had the baby on a Saturday, it was just so interesting, the similarities between the births. My daughter and my husband like ran in the room and I'm holding him, you know, like in that like post-birth high that every woman knows. You're like holding your baby, you're just like all the emotion. He came in and like when I locked eyes with my husband, I just started crying and I just was like, I did it. I did it. I did it. Like I was so proud of not just me, but like us. I just remember like looking at him and being like, we did it. We did it together. And you're here and like we did this together. And that was incredible. He was so much bigger than my first baby. He was 1.5 pounds heavier than my first baby, much longer, bigger head. Overall, I feel great postpartum. If you're not feeling great postpartum, please know you're not alone. I have had 2 very different postpartum experiences. Just like physically, my recovery with my first was very difficult. Oh, and this time I have felt so leaking. I have felt so much better, so strong, so much healthier mentally and physically. And so it's just been such a wonderful, yeah, it has felt like such a wonderful and empowering experience of just showing me like what's possible, truly, and what I have been learning, which I've shared so much on this channel, what I've been learning in motherhood for the past few years was just how much our perspective and the way that we view things change everything. And that's been like an ongoing lesson for me as a mom. And this birth felt like a catalyst of that. Like it felt like that in a very concentrated way and a poignant reminder. And I've just like carried that into my postpartum experience. And it's been lovely. We're just in bliss getting to know him. So this is our son. Oh, hi. Oh, sorry. You're sleeping. He's sleeping. But thank you for hanging out with us. Oh, sweet boy. Thank you for hanging out with us and for hearing my birth story. I hope it encourages you and inspires you to know that you were made to do this and your body's built for it. And it is such a beautiful opportunity to initiate into the kind of woman that you want to become.